And I think it's, one of the reasons that we're still married, I guess, and still together and happy.
Oh, I'm crying right now. I think what you just said
Sorry.
was so sweet, which is like that, no matter what's going on, you have someone who's supporting you. And I never thought of that. Welcome to the Ask a Matchmaker podcast. I'm your host, Matchmaker Maria, and I'm wrapping up the solo summer series episodes. I promise in a couple of weeks, I'll be back in the studio. You're joining me here again, though, on the solo episodes, although it's not really solo because I do have a special guest towards the end of this episode. If you heard last week's episode, you heard my sister and fellow matchmaker, Crisula, talk about what made it work since, she met her partner in her early 20s before certain big criteria that a lot of people use to swipe away soulmates could be known and how they went the distance. This week, I have my brother-in-law, Yanni, joining us on the podcast to talk about his side of the story. I also ask him what his favorite thing about my sister is. And spoiler alert, I do cry because anyone saying such nice things about my sister is going to make me cry. Anyway, welcome back to the Ask a Matchmaker podcast. As I said earlier on the show, I am excited to wrap up the summer series because September is here. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm in the back to school mindset. And that back to school mindset, it is really drilled into us starting at the age of 5, right? We have to go get our hair done. We've got to get new shoes. We've got to go get the outfits. We need a new bag. There's all these things that we did for so many years. Why should it stop as adults? So I feel like for me, this is actually my New Year's, not January 1st, because nothing really changes between Christmas break for me and how my lifestyle is going. The weather has not certainly changed. It's still quite cold then. And, maybe I might have a gadget that I got as a Christmas gift that I didn't have before, but nothing is really changing. Whereas here I feel like a lot of things are changing, right? I had a summer reset. I felt like, okay, we did the first leg of the book tour. That was in May and June and July. Now we've got to start the second leg. Which cities should I go to next? If you're on YouTube, please tell me in the comments, what city should I visit on the second leg of the book tour? I really hope to get out to you. And if you know any independent bookstores that would love to have me, please let me know so I can head out there too. But I want to hear from you as well. But to go back to that mindset, I feel like it is a great opportunity to also reflect on like what we want to start, what we need to get done. What did we procrastinate on all summer? And it's also now a reminder to check in on people, right? This is the perfect opportunity to start reaching out to friends that you haven't spoken to in a while, saying, hey, I thought about you this summer. I'm just checking in. Let's grab a coffee this month. I challenge you to reach out to 3 people today that you haven't spoken to in a while who you should check in with, because checking in with those people is what's going to blast open your opportunities to meet someone special or to do fun things should you be single. Now, if you are in a relationship, it's the same thing. This is the time to check in with people because you need to make those plans. I want to know that you have set up a double date, a triple date sometime in the next 4 weeks with other people. I also really challenge you to have a harvest dinner where you invite a mixed group of friends. And what I mean by that is not just inviting your friends that are in relationships, but inviting your single friends to also mingle with each other. I'm not saying that your single friends are going to date each other, but you have to give them the opportunity to get to know each other. And maybe they might have a friend for that other friend. That is how we dated before Match.com. That is how we dated before Tinder exploded on all of our phones. There is a way to go back to that. It hasn't disappeared just because you have an online dating app on your phone. It just takes more work. What's changed is you, for many of us, me included, we have gotten used to convenience culture, right? How many of us have ordered a Starbucks in our car? or on the way to Starbucks to pick it up at the counter instead of interacting with a barista. That is convenience. You know, we have it on our phones, right? We have the Amazon app, we have Ubers, we have you know, Instacart. All this is convenience culture that really just keeps us in a place where we don't really interact with people. I am challenging you to interact with people in September. So if you're single, I want you to reach out to 3 people you haven't reached out to and say, hey, end of summer, new month, let's hang out. And if you're in a relationship, I want you to host a dinner party. And I kind of want you to host 2 dinner parties by the end of October. Let me know in the comments if you are going to take up this challenge, because I think it's really important. This is the perfect time to check in with people. This is also the perfect opportunity to take those photos. If you have been procrastinating on taking new online dating photos, or just in general, nice photos to have of yourself, this is the time to do it. You can Google online dating photographers. If you're in New Jersey or New York, you can always contact our team and we can send you to someone that we trust. We have a few photographers that we work with all the time. But this is the time to do it. And it's interesting because recently I told someone you need to get new photos and they said, okay, but I'm not on any online dating apps. And I said to them, well, that's fine, because you still need new photos for your Instagram or for your LinkedIn. And when they asked why, I said, it's very simple. Last time I talked about you to someone, the first thing they said to me is pull up their Instagram. And I pulled up your Instagram and they're looking at photos of you. So I want you to have like a nice photo of you where you look like confident and fun and an interesting person to go out with. And I think getting those photos done is what can just boost your confidence and help you grow those opportunities. The last thing I want to talk to you about quickly is that before I have on my guest, I feel like I've hit the ground running since coming back. I only got here 2 days ago. That being said, I never logged off of work while I was in Greece. I was working there, I was doing meetings. I feel like I suddenly have more time though, in the sense that I am no longer thinking about like, oh, I have to be on Zoom at 4 p.m. Oh, I have to be on Zoom at 10 p.m. Oh, I need to do a roundtable at what time is it? 3 a.m. And so I'm happy to be back on the time zone I belong in. I'm also happy to be back in New Jersey. And that is because I feel like anytime I travel for too long, I just miss my everyday. I miss my routine. I will tell you that sometimes when you travel, especially when things are, let's call them politically ambiguous, people tend to talk to you a lot about what they're hearing and what they're seeing in the country that you're from. So suddenly you become the ambassador. And I felt this year I had to make a strong differentiation every time we were having conversations about the United States, which is that the United States is very big and the cultural differences between states is quite massive. And that the things that are happening in one state, you know, it does not necessarily affect my day to day, and that I can only focus on like the tri-state news for my own sanity. I don't think we're meant to know necessarily what's happening on a day-to-day basis about locations that, you know, frankly, a lot of us are never going to even visit. I know that's a really grim answer, but it was the U.S. ambassador answer that I could possibly give while on a trip with my family at my in-laws. Anyway, while that's been happening, of something I recently wrote also went viral. It's called "What We Get Wrong About the Male Loneliness Epidemic." And in this article, I explore a theme about how it's not women's fault, and to say that, you know, men experiencing loneliness is women's fault is quite lazy. The reasons why there is a segment of the United States population that is experiencing loneliness has to more do with how we teach a gender how to build community, how to experience all of their emotions. The reasons why a segment of that population might be experiencing loneliness might also be systemic, and in how we coordinated urban planning, or the architecture of our towns post World War II, and how we, promoted the nuclear family over, being dependent or at least interdependent among our community members. And while I have that in the article that's on Substack and on Instagram, and I'll put the link in the show notes for anyone who wants to read it in case you missed it, I also explore this theme in my book as well. I believe it's in chapter 9. And the thing that was interesting for me to write this while I was in Greece was the experience of talking to people in Greece about the male loneliness epidemic in the United States, because there is also a flare of loneliness in Greece, not necessarily just men, women included, but I think the symptoms are different. And there it's almost all of it can be blamed on the financial crisis that happened in the last 10 years, and how people just cannot afford to necessarily go out, let alone experience certain things to, you know, uh, pump some adrenaline into their communities. At the same token, in the US, I felt like there were certain men and certain women that were lonely and that they could not interact within their community. It did not feel systemic in the sense that there were no town squares, or that there weren't certain communities within villages that were inviting them out to participate in. Now, what these two communities have in common is that you have algorithms that are designed to keep you on the app, and that can keep you single depending on what sort of information is being exchanged on that algorithm. Are you being promoted, misogynistic content? Are you being promoted extreme viewpoints that, if you adopt those viewpoints, might make you the kind of person that some people don't want to share a life with? And I felt like I saw that I've seen that in the United States. I've seen that in Greece. I think that the loneliness symptom, the causes for loneliness, though, are inherently different in both societies. And getting a front row seat to this is a very interesting experience for me, because I'm trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. And the reason why I'm trying to make sense of it is because no matter where I go in the US or Greece, when the moment someone hears I'm a matchmaker, it's, oh my God, I have this cousin, you need to meet them, and I hear that. And I love that I hear that. I love that people trust me enough to let me set up their families or their friends. But I always like to know, well, what do they do for fun? Who are their friends? How are they participating in their community? And I felt like I was getting more robust answers in Greece versus what I would get in the States. So now it's just a matter of like availability versus, the algorithm keeping you home. So that's it for what I want to say in the solo summer series episode. Next up is my brother-in-law, Yanni. All right, so I do have a special guest on this week's episode, as I mentioned at the top. And if you listened to last week's episode, you might know who it is, but I want to get the other side. And that is my brother-in-law, husband to matchmaker Chrysula, that is my sister, Yannis Mavrianos. Welcome to the pod, Yanni. I just realized that I'm talking to you in my podcast voice, which is making me laugh. So, but welcome to the pod.
Hey, Maria. It's great to be here. First time on a podcast.
I love that. I love that I'm your first. It's interesting because I was recording the beginning of this episode and then you logged in and I had not turned off the podcast voice. And then I realized it as you started talking. I was like, hi, Yanni. And I'm like, oh, tone it down. That's not how we talk to each other. Anyway.
That's okay. That's okay.
So I don't know if you heard last week's episode, but on your 12th wedding anniversary.
Yes, 12th.
Yes, 12th wedding anniversary, your wife was on and she was telling me about how you met, how it happened, and the lessons along the way in making a marriage work. And the reason why I find her story quite fascinating, or your story, I mean, together, is because you met really young and you were friends first and then you started dating, but there was a lot of unknowns in that equation before getting married, before having children with each other. And some of those unknowns are, for instance, your career prospects, your income, how you might react to the political discourse that has shaped, for you know our morality. I mentioned that earlier in the episode. So I want to hear your side. Tell me about, like, what was your first impression of my sister, and did you like her in the beginning, or did that happen over time with familiarity?
Um, okay, so yeah, a funny story actually. Me and your sister knew each other before we knew each other, and let me explain. Apparently, we went to the same Greek school as well. We were in the same class in Greek school, but we just never remembered each other. So we were reintroduced, I guess, when I moved to the States or back to the States in 2005 through some mutual friends at a Greek festival. And I remember the first time I met your sister and we kind of chatted a little bit. I was like, okay, I can get on with her. I kind of enjoyed, my time, and I kind of liked her from the beginning. Although nothing really happened, for quite a while. Um, but there was always a little bit of attraction, I guess, on my side. Um, yeah, and then we were friends. We just hung out with a lot of, we had a lot of mutual friends, so we hung out very often. And one thing led to the other, and after a few years, we kind of started dating.
What do you think has made it work, despite, like, before I mentioned, you didn't know so much about how you would be as adults when you
Hmm.
met in your young 20s,
Yeah,
in your
so
early 20s.
I think the timing was way off in the beginning. Like we were in two different kind of stages of our lives. Um, but what ended up happening is, as our relationship kind of grew and we got closer together, we kind of grew as individuals as well. So like we experienced a lot of things. Um, together for the first time. Like getting your first real job, or paying bills. A lot of these things that kind of like you know you kind of like leave home, I guess, and become more and more independent. So yeah, professionally we grew together. We supported each other. It was kind of like we went through all these stages at the same time, and I think that helped us kind of bond and become in tune with each other's needs. So we kind of created this support system where, we supported each other and we learned together and went through all these experiences together. And I think that really helped us build, the strong relationship that we have now, which of course wasn't without it's hurdles, I guess. Or early on, there was a lot of difficulties. Being that we were so young and there was so much that we still hadn't experienced. Um, like the first year of our relationship was kind of chaotic, right? Then Christina, for example, wanted to get her master's in England. I wanted to move back to Greece. So we had to do the whole long distance thing, which was very difficult. So yeah, we went through a lot. But I think at some point we said, okay, we've been through all this. It's time to kind of get serious with our lives, and we decided to, um, you know, uh, kind of cross that bridge together.
Do you feel like your stint in England with her while she was pursuing her master's and you living in a studio apartment brought you closer? Or were there moments where you're like, oh my God, I need to go back?
um, Honestly, I think after living in like one room for all those months, we kind of said, okay, if we made it through this, we can make it through anything. Because Now let's say you get frustrated or you get annoyed with something, you could just walk out of the room, go for a walk. Like, apart from the walk, we didn't, and obviously the weather was always terrible in London, so you don't really want to be walking in the rain. There was really nothing to do. So like if we argued about something, like there's nothing to do. It's just you're in the same room. You kind of have to solve it. And that's where we kind of learned a lot about each other, because my approach was way different, right? I wanted to solve things immediately. Priscilla was a little bit more okay. Like after a few hours, everything was kind of back to normal. Where that's something that we had to kind of teach each other, right? So I had to accept that maybe it's not, right after an argument, it's not the time to solve things, and she would be a little bit more forgiving if I tried to, clarify things. So I think it really taught us a lot about our boundaries and, how to kind of deal with each other's emotions, I guess.
And, since you know my parents and since, Crasula obviously knows your parents, do you ever find yourself like one of the things that me and George talk about a lot is like the things that we need to unlearn from our parents, especially as it pertains to conflict resolution, which is something you just touched on. Do
Hmm.
you feel like, knowing the foundation that she comes from, um, is there like a little bit did you find that you could give her a little bit more grace in understanding like she was not
Um,
taught, right away to like solve things right away? Because I know what how our parents are, right? Like we mentioned this
yeah.
in the last week's episode.
So, you know, I think looking at it now, I'd agree that our upbringing, I guess, in our family environment could have played a role. But back then, that wasn't a thought. It was more like, we each had our mentalities and our approaches to it. And I think, um, if you ask me now, today, I say, yeah, for sure. Our families had an impact on how we kind of approach conflict resolution, or even how we reach the point of conflict and why we would reach the point of conflict, right? Because there's a lot of things that we were used to in a close environment like that, where things that I was used to in my household, maybe Kushida wasn't used to, so it would create a lot of friction. So if you ask me today again, I would say yeah, for sure. But back then, I don't think I really had the maturity to kind of think of it from that angle. I think it was more of like, we really wanted to make it work. I knew Hishura was the person for me, and she knew that I was the person for her. And we said, okay, how can we make each other better, right? And how can we, uh, adapt ourselves to become a better partner, and to also, be the partner that supports the other to grow and learn. So, it's not like we analyzed it; it just kind of came intuitively. I don't know.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
I mean,
it
it's
just
true. Like
yeah,
we don't
I
know
feel
what we don't
lucky.
know, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know. I know you and Crasula have certainly put in a lot of work. All right. So last question. 12 years married, 17 years together. What is your favorite thing about her?
Whew, where do I start? Okay.
Aw.
So, well, Chris, I always liked Tsuda ever since, more than 17 years. My favorite thing about her is that first and foremost, she's loyal. She's a great mother. She's a great partner. She's very supportive. She loves wholly. I don't know if that makes sense. Like she gives herself. Like I can't measure how much she loves me and the kids. And to me, I feel very lucky and blessed to be able to have that in my life. Yeah, and she's just a great partner that always, supports me. I always know I have someone, on my side, and someone that'll help me through any kind of difficulty. And to me, that's very important. And I think it's, one of the reasons that we're still married, I guess, and still together and happy. So, uh, yeah,
Um, I'm crying right now. I think what you just said was
sorry.
so sweet, which is like that, no matter what's going on, you have someone who's supporting you. And I never thought of that. I think,
Yeah.
people always say like, oh, not people, but some people might say like marriage is hard. And I was recently listening to a podcast. I don't remember the name of it, but the pretty famous creators on TikTok. And they said, marriage isn't hard, life is hard. And if you find the right partner to go through life with,
Mm.
it makes, life worth living, I guess. But otherwise,
Yeah. I mean, I agree, and to an extent, it's also once you find the right person or the person you want to make it work with, I think you're lucky if the other person feels the same way, of course. But you kind of adjust and change yourself, and you see that on the other side as well, and you mold each other, to create that fit. It's not there from the beginning. Kind
yeah,
of, I think that's why people say marriage is hard, right? Because you have to obviously adapt and adjust as life happens.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think me and Crystal are very lucky because we've been able to do that together, and I think that's why we've kind of created that strong mold now.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Well, Yanni, thank you so much for giving us the other side. I'm so happy to have you
Yeah.
on the podcast. And
Thanks for
next
having me.
time we'll have you on. If you come back to the States, I'll have you on to answer some Ask a Matchmaker questions with your
Okay.
quick wit. If you think
uh,
I'm no nonsense, let me tell you about my brother-in-law, Yanni.
yeah. Okay. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for joining me on the Ask a Matchmaker podcast. Solo series episodes are slowly coming to an end, and I can't wait to have you join me back in the studio for Ask a Matchmaker. Be lovable, but more importantly, be likable. See you next week.